Let's make these boulders for some scatter terrain. This is probably the most simple and basic craft you can do. That being said, it's an excellent one for developing your stone painting skills. So I'm just going to start off with a big chunk of scrap foam. This will be a lot of knife work, so please use your PPE. This is a cut-resistant glove. So I'll just... This will be a good chunk. And I'll just start kind of carving this down into a rock shape. Really being sort of, you know, as I get in there, go in and pry it off and really trying to intentionally make breaks in sort of natural shapes. You obviously don't want to have any clean, smooth surfaces here. That's the lady of the cave. She's a little tired right now, I'd say. Yes, my dear, that will be going on the bloopers. You're quite welcome. You're quite welcome. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I just kind of hacked away at this until I get something like stone shaped. Make a couple of these. All right, I have a bunch of these carved up. I've left the bottoms of them flat. It just helps them to sit more nicely on the surface. But now I'm just going to paint them. So I'll base them. Almost forgot. I'm going to take I have this, once again, I have this really gnarly, bumpy rock that I use for texturing. You could also just use a wad of aluminum foil and just go in and roll it around on there and lay in some texture. This rock has a couple points on it that I like to really just bang in there and bust this up so it looks a little less smooth and a little more rocky. And what better to texture rock than rock, right? Literally found this out in the rocks outside our house. This one has a lot of iron in it, which makes it very hard and, as I said, sort of bumpy and knobby. Excuse my filthy hands. I am crafting here. What's better? You compare this to this. Next, I'm going to do an overbrush in gray. An overbrush is just like a damp brush. It's not a dry brush. It's not a very wet brush. You're just kind of slapping on. I want maybe, 80% coverage. So overbrushing is kind of like dry brushing. I do load the paint on the brush. I don't want to hit the piece with all of that, though. I will pull off most of it. And then kind of like dry brushing. Again, I'm not smashing the brush down into the details. I'm just going to... You want to hit most of it. So it looks like that. Really simple, quick. Just like I said, kind of a damp brush. After I've done the overbrush, I'll go back actually and just kind of re-hit highlights with the same color. Just to create some variation. You can see there like that. Sometimes you might put a little bit too much paint on somewhere. Just go with your finger and sort of tap it off. It's okay. It's still pretty wet. This is a very... really the sloppier and the less precise, the better. You don't want to really overthink this. Just really slap it on. Hit some spots that make sure I really punch up those highlighted areas. I don't want it to be too uniform. You want to let these completely dry before we go in and do the dry brushing. And if you didn't see this coming, you haven't been paying attention. Suede for the dry brush. So this is what I would call truly dry brush. Again, load the paint on the brush. I remove most of it on a paper towel. I'll come back to this when I need to reload, but I'm going to essentially paint the paper towel till I leave almost none behind. I don't want to put big globs. I don't want to put big, dollops of paint on my work, and I'll test it maybe down here where you can't really see too much, and yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, see, I went a little too dry there, actually. Whoa! These are jumping rocks. So you see here, if you can tell the difference, this is what I'm going for. This is after the dry brushing. This looks pretty good. There's nothing wrong with that. It works, but just the dry brushing picks up all those edge highlights and things and really begins to sell that as looking like a piece of rock. Experiment, really play with the paints and get effects that you want. Try making it thicker in some places. Try different colors. I'm just going for the most basic here with just grays and blacks and things. I'm keeping it super simple intentionally for the purposes of this very beginner craft, super beginner craft here. You know, but really experiment. Heck, what if you had pink rocks or purple rocks? It doesn't matter. Just use the same principles. Start off with a dark bottom layer and build up layers, getting lighter and lighter, both in tone and in the amount of paint. So brighter color on top and lighter coats of paint as you go. And then you're going to get a similar effect. You'll just have a different palette that you're working with. That's all. But same technique, no matter what paints I'm using, no matter what color stone I'm going for, I am using the exact same. And I generally will have 3, maybe 4. So on these, I had a black base coat with the gray overbrush and now the suede dry brush. I am probably going to go through next and do a very, very, very dry brush and just get some edge highlights with the Craft Smart Vanilla. And that will just be for light. I imagine this is an outdoor scene. Sunlight could be hitting these rocks. So I will go through and do edge highlights with that Craft Smart Vanilla. But if I were doing, let's just say I wanted a brown stone, I'm going to start off with a dark brown. And then I'll go with I want a lighter brown probably, but not something very red. I might even do that same dark brown and just mix some gray in with it. And then the suede still. I use suede for almost all of my dry brushing. But you could use something else. If you wanted to you could really go in with a tan or some lighter brown. Or just straight to the Craft Smart, right straight to the vanilla. If I were doing, like I wanted a blue stone, I'm going to start with that very dark blue, black. This is that stuff I got at Lowe's, the Dutch licorice. It may just look black here on camera, but that is a very dark blue, black. Start there, and then just maybe add some gray to that to lighten it up, to get that overbrush. And then again, maybe suede, I'll do suede for the dry brush. So almost always, I have like three tones, dark, middle, light. And then again, as I said today, I will do the highlights, edge highlights with the vanilla. So I have here Craft Smart Vanilla for edge highlights. And this is barely anything. I mean, this is such a light, super dry brush. You barely even notice the difference unless you're actually painting it. So I just want barely any of this to I'm just going to go through. I'm only going to do downward strokes. Sunlight is coming down and hitting these top edges of things. Barely does anything, but it's just enough to pop those edges a bit and make them look like they're being hit by sunlight. Just a little bit all the way around. I'm just doing quick downstrokes, just hitting the top edges with the smallest amount of paint. As the painter, you know they're there. If you are somebody who just sees them on the table, you might not know they're there consciously, but unconsciously you do. I don't know if the camera can even pick it up, barely see the difference there. There is a difference. And again, it just goes that one step further to sell the idea that these are going to be rocks sitting outside somewhere. At this point, they even begin to kind of sound like stone, like a pumice stone. So for probably, I'm going to say 40 to 50 cents worth of foam and maybe 3 cents worth of paint, it doesn't get any better than that for me. I think these look fantastic. So as I said, it doesn't get any more simple than these stones, but as you can see, they really can make this terrain come to life. We got 3 new patrons this week. Welcome to the cave, Distorted Reality, CJ, and Isaac Collier.